Hello again, this is Justin. I thought I would give you guys a little bit of a demonstration of what's coming out in OpenMoxie version 0.8. This update's about to roll out, and the big features of it are mostly structural. So there are changes to kind of support third-party applications running on OpenMoxie. As you can see, the main page has changed a little bit. I've condensed this mission editing. I used to call it, I think, content progress. I just renamed it missions to keep it smaller. You may notice a new button here, data, and I'll get into that in a minute. The big change here is that we have this content database section in the middle, which is where we're going to kind of manage importing and exporting content that we've created in our own OpenMoxie. And then the rest of it's pretty much like you saw before. So the first thing is that everything has been reorganized for remote content creation. And so one of the things we can do is now we can create content and we can export it. And so if I've, say, created some content, which I have, I can click to export. And here I can give a name, I can give some details about the content, and then I can pick which of the content blocks I want to export for other people to share. And so I might want to have created a new thing, and I'm going to say that I have a new timer. So I'm going to export the timers. So I have two global responses, timer start and timer check. And basically that's it. So I could just export these two new global responses, and I could call them Justin timers. And I could say this is support for timers expiring. Now this isn't actually all we need. We actually need this alarm fire module too, and this schedule that supports timers. But so we're going to do this: support for timers expiring, Justin timers export. And so it just saves this file. Well, you can't see it, but it saved justintimers.json. And now I can share that to somebody if I wanted to. And I can also basically re-import it myself. So I'm just going to do that, and we see Justin timers. And I upload for review, and now it shows me, oh, I'm importing content. And the content that I can import are these two global responses, and you can see it's going to replace v3. It's a v3, it replaces v3, because I already have all of this content. So I'm not going to import it all, but if I wanted to, I could just check the things I wanted to import, and I can click import, and it'll bring it into my Moxie content. And if you ever wanted to kind of look at it, it's not very easy, but you can expand the details, and you can see that there's two global responses, and you can kind of see what they are. It's a little hard to read the code. I'm going to maybe clean that up at some future time. But I'm not going to import anything, so we've already done that. And you can see that I already have this content here, so I already have this basic memory chat, the about me, and the Moxie Go, and the alarm fire. So everything I've done has already been designed here. The big thing about the content blocks is that you can now do a lot of things with them. And so I'm going to actually switch over and show you some of the documentation. Let's see, maybe we can switch to the documentation. This control is in the wrong place. Okay, so now here I added, basically, if you look here, I have 4 different markdown files with documentation. I expanded the content modules. So these are the conversations, really. And I documented kind of what the default ones that come with the system are, just in case anybody was wondering what these all are. And I documented the fields that you use when you create your own simple chat. And of course, these were all here before. The new things are really this code block. And then we've added support for these custom response tags. And so response tags are basically actions that you can key to an AI response. And so, for instance, I have an example here. If the user asks to stop or quit, respond with exit. And so any of these tags you can specify that the AI respond with. And if the AI does respond with them, they end up getting caught in the post-processing and connected with actions on the robot. And so if you say exit, it will try to exit the module. And if you say launch : with a module ID, you would put like a real module ID here, like AB for animal breath. It'll launch another module. You can launch to custom content in a module, and you can launch with confirmation, and you can put the robot back to sleep. In addition to that, this prompt field here, as you can see, it used to just be text, and so you could just put a prompt, but now it actually supports templates. So these are Django templates. And so here you can see that inside of a template it looks like text, but you can actually just check any of these custom fields. And so here, you can't even read that, but you say, here we're having a conversation with your friend, and instead of just saying your friend, I actually pull the nickname from the configuration. So I get the volley is the object that has all of the information. So the volley contains the inputs going up from the robot, so a speech input, like the user said something, and then it produces the output inside the volley to respond to the user. And so in this case, we can use anything inside the volley inside the template. So in this case, I used the config child PII nickname. And you may recognize these fields because you maybe saw these when you were doing editing of your child's nickname if you were looking at your custom config. But in here, so now we can check if the session overflow is set, which means that we've exceeded the maxed volleys. Instead of just responding, I say whatever the user says, politely respond, and do not ask any questions. Because I know the conversation is going to end, and it's very annoying when the AI asks something right before the conversation is about to terminate. Otherwise, you just have a normal prompt. And so that's a simple example of how you can start bringing in data into these text prompts. But where the real power comes in is in this advanced content portion. And we talk about the volley. And so the volley goes to the AI, and the AI is going to produce a response. But maybe you want to do something before it goes to the AI. And so this code block that I mentioned up here, right, it allows you to basically put in a bunch of Python methods. And if those methods are in your code block, the system will automatically call them in the course of processing a volley. And so we have normal volley flow. So the volley comes in, and if there's a preprocess function, we call the preprocess function. And if the preprocess function returns true, that means it did everything that needs to be done for the volley, and we don't even talk to the AI at all. If the preprocess returns false, it may have still altered the volley, and that's okay. But we're going to go ahead and send it off to the AI. And so after it does that, and it gets the response from the AI, we then put that into the volley, and the volley can call the post-process method. And so this post-process means that you can take custom actions after the AI has produced a response and before it goes to the user. So for instance, you might check to see if the response has something important. You might have some custom rules about what the AI might produce as an output, and you want to be able to handle those. Whatever it is, you can use this post-process method for that. And then if the volley doesn't contain markup by the end of the volley, but it has a text field, the text is automatically converted to markup using auto markup, which is what it did before. And so the method signatures for these are pre-process. We always take a volley, and we always take the session. And the session is basically the chat session, has the whole history of the conversation that we're having. Post-process, the same thing. The difference being here that this one returns a Boolean, so if you don't return something that evaluates as true, then the process will keep going. If you do return true here, the process will abort at the pre-process and will return whatever you've produced for a response. In addition to this, there's a whole nother method called the complete handler. And the complete handler is called at the very, very end of a conversation. So when the user has finished a module and moved on to the next conversation, this complete handler gets called and when the session is done. And it allows you to do things like call the session summarization method. And so if you want, you can get a summary of what the user talked about. And our volley also has a connection to persistent data. And that allows you to basically save information that you get in these methods and use them later. And then in addition to that, so if you have looked through some of the remote chat documentation, every time Moxie actually says something as the result of a volley, it posts the fact that it set it in the notify message. And if you want to know specifically when Moxie produced a response, you can listen to the notify handler. This is very unlikely that you would need this, but I added it for completeness, and I actually needed it for one of my examples. As I mentioned, the volley itself is kind of the container that holds all of the information being passed to process and input. It's passed a number of data fields that can be used easily within templates or within the code functions. So the one thing it has is local data. This is a dictionary of data that is brand new for any session. And so for any basically instance of a conversation that you have, this local data starts and it goes away at the end. But so if you wanted to say track something that's happening within a conversation, you can store it in local data and retrieve it from local data. Otherwise, it goes away by the end of the conversation. Persistent data is another dictionary, but it is actually persistent. So it gets connected to the robot and it's stored in a new persistent data table. And every time you basically are in a conversation, your persistent data record is there and you can write to it. And when the robot disconnects, the persistent data is written out to the database, otherwise it's held in RAM. And so the persistent database lasts through power cycles and through shutdowns of OpenMoxie if you need to. It has been truly persistent, and it just stays in the database. Then we have the request. This is the detailed remote chat request that comes in. The response is the response we're making back to the robot. The config is the robot's configuration object, so if you wanted to look at any of what your settings are, or anything like that, and you could do that. And then state is the robot state, so it posts things like the battery level and things like that. So you can also use that in your prompts. And then we have entities, which are basically for global responses only, and they contain a list of extracted entities. I mentioned also we have this conversation summarization API. And this is something that can be called on the conversation. So at any of those volleys where you have a conversation, a session, I'm sorry, you can basically call this summarize method. And summarize has a simple prompt. It says summarize the following conversation between friendly robot Moxie and the user. And then keep the summary brief, but include any important details. If you don't like that prompt, you can write your own prompt. And if you don't like the model, by default, you use the same model as the conversation. So if you're doing a GPT-4 Turbo conversation, you're going to use GPT-4 Turbo for your summary. But let's say you're using GPT 3.5 Turbo for the conversation, but you want the summary to really be very good. So you could, for instance, pass GPT 4.0 or something as the model name just for the summarization part. You can also override that prompt with whatever prompt you want. And you can override the max tokens because sometimes these prompts produce a lot. And then if you want to disable the transcript appending, you can. By default, the summary will append the entire transcript of the session, but sometimes you can just want to use the summarize method to make a generic prompt with no transcript. And so I have the ability to disable it so that you can use the summarize API just to get information out. And you can see I made a little example here at the end. So I made a custom conversation, and I basically do two summarization requests. I say review this conversation. If the user talked about food, say they are still talking about food. Otherwise, say no food talk this time. And I do the same for games. And this is really silly, but it kind of shows that after the conversation completes, you can ask the AI to review the conversation, and you can ask of what they talked about or anything like that. And at the end, you can save those results into the persistent memory so that you can use it in a future conversation. So that explains basically the framework that I've kind of created for handling custom volleys. In addition, I have this remote module API, which really talks about all of these actions in detail. And this is worth looking through if you ever needed to get into the guts of it. But the big parts of it are that there's an event handling section where you can subscribe to events coming from the robot, like when the face search finds a face or when a timer expires. So you can enable face searches. You can enable custom visual detectors like the book reader, which is a probably not very useful, but it detects the covers of books that Moxie was trained to recognize. There's an Aruco code recognizer and there's a QR code recognizer. You can use any of those in the conjunction with a conversation to make it useful. There's some timers that can cause Moxie to like say something and then wait a little bit and then say something else. You can use wait timers. You can interact with the schedule. You can disable global commands. And you can handle events. And I also have a section about timers. And I'm going to explain a little bit about those as I go through some of the example code. But these are all kind of functions that you can do with Moxie and things that are supported in Moxie's firmware already. So that said, I'm going to take us back to our view of OpenMoxie. And now I'm going to talk about some of the content that I created to show off these features. And so I'm going to start off and I'm going to look at the most complicated example, which is the memory chat. And so our memory chat basically is down here. And it's basically a chat conversation, kind of like the OpenMoxie chat default. But in this case, it does a lot more. And I'm going to show you the code I used for it. And it's right here. And so you can see here, I only implement 2 of the methods for memory conversation. I implement post-process. And the post-process is because I want to create a custom opener. And I'll actually, let me show you that part first, now that I'm thinking that might be clearer. So we're going to go back to OpenMoxie, and we're going to go into our admin. We're going to look at our single prompt chats. We're going to remember our chat. Okay. So you see our basic memory chat is here. And if you see, as I mentioned before in the documentation anyway, openers are basically what the conversation starts with. What does Moxie say when the module starts? And you can separate multiple options with the pipe character. So you see I have let's have a chat, pipe, I'd love to talk with you, what sounds good, pipe, anything on your mind. And then I have this tag, opener. Okay, so that's not one of the tags I mentioned, but it's important to know that any tag that has between greater than less than signs is automatically parsed out and discarded at the end. And so you can use these tags for your own purposes, and so I'm using it for my own purpose. So I made a custom tag. I called it opener. And so the idea is that randomly it's going to pick one of these 3 openers. This one's going to be normal, this one's going to be normal. This one is going to be special because it has this opener tag, and I'm going to cover that in a minute. Then we have our conversation. So we're a robot named Moxie. We're having a conversation with, hey, there's our name again. We have our overflow rule that I showed you in the example. But now, chat about topics interesting, finds the person interesting. And the real interesting part is that the things you know about your friend can be found in the facts section below. And then I have the section called facts. And look, I pull our chat facts from our persistent data. And so if we know something about the user, we can pull the facts out in the facts section. And this gives the AI a whole bunch of information about your user, so that when they're having the conversation, if you have some fact that you've learned about the user, you can talk about that fact and you will remember that fact. So this is a really nice way to kind of introduce some simple memories into conversation flow. That said, now that I've shown you the prompt, let's show you how it works. And so here's my opener, right? So as you may notice, the opener doesn't fit exactly in the volley scheme, at least it doesn't seem like it does, but in reality the opener volley is handled just like any other volley. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and let the system handle the open volley, but when we go to post-process it, so after all of the stuff has already been done for the open volley, I'm going to get the response, right, that the AI said. In this case, the AI is going to be the opener. And then I'm going to say if there's an opener tag in that response, that means I want to make a custom opening, not just reply with whatever the opener said. And so in this case, I get So from my persistent data, I'm going to get the memory chat object. And then from the memory chat object, I'm going to get the summaries. And the summaries are just an array, so they're a list of summaries of conversations we've had with Moxie. And so assuming that this list exists and has something in it, we're going to randomly pick one. So we're going to randomly pick one of the items in the list. And now instead of just producing the opener, I'm going to actually generate an opener using the summarize method. So I'm going to say don't append the transcript, well, because there's no transcript, it's the opener. And I say in my prompt, provide an opening line for the conversation with your friend. In a previous chat, you discussed the details in the summary section below. Ask if this is a good topic or if they have something else they wanted to talk about. And then we append the summary section, which appends the conversation summary that we had. And now, instead of the AI saying, let's talk about something, the AI will say, like, last time we were talking about how you love StarCraft. Would you like to talk about that some more, or is there something else you want to talk about? And so immediately, just from this post process, we've pulled memories into the conversation. And then at the very end of the conversation, right, our complete handler fires off. And so I check, well, I want to make sure the total volleys are at least 6. So I want to make sure we had at least 3 things each person said back and forth, and that the user didn't immediately quit out of this conversation. But assuming they stayed in it for a few lines, I'm going to just create the basic summary using the summarize method. And I'm going to get the memory record for memory chat. I'm going to get the summary list, and I'm going to insert the new summary at the head of the list. And then I don't want to keep more than 10 of them. So if the list gets bigger than 10 summaries, I'm just going to throw away anything that's bigger than 10 so that the list stays as at most 10 previous conversations. And then we have, if we don't have facts, this is the very first time. So if we've never generated facts about a user, right, because I don't have the facts record in the memory chat record. So in that case, I'm just going to make new facts. So extract useful facts or personal details about the user learned from this conversation. Reply only with a concise list of the most important facts. And so then we get those facts extracted by the AI, and the AI, we save them in this facts part of the record. And then if we've already gotten some facts before, so we've had a conversation before, now I'm going to ask the AI to update those facts instead. So now I say update the facts about the user using the facts below, given the conversation transcript below. Add any new details, correct anything inaccurate, combine similar facts, and remove trivial ones to produce a revised set of no more than 25 facts. And so we want to keep the facts list from growing unbounded because it'll just eat up tokens. And so we give the AI a chance to kind of consolidate the list down to like a core set of 25 facts. And then we write those back to the facts record, and this facts record is part of our persistent memory. So basically, just by doing this, it's going to go into our persistent memory at the end of the chat. And admittedly, this does summarize twice, and so every summary can take a few seconds, and so this is not instantaneous. So if you immediately started a new conversation, you would not have that persistent data because it's running in the background collecting it. But eventually, these things will accumulate, and you will have all of these great memories and facts about your user. And to kind of show you, I've done this, and so we're going to go back to our site page, and we're going to go to this OpenMoxie where I had these conversations, and now you can see I have this data record here. And so this is where we can actually see like what happened and got accumulated in our persistent data. So I had these conversations with my OpenMoxie, which is a little simulator, but you can see, oh, I have some persistent memory. Now I have memory chat, and I have summaries. And so these are 4 conversations I guess I've had with Moxie, and these are in a reverse order. So the most recent conversation is here. And you can see I talked about Star Trek, and I said my favorite characters were Data, Worf, and Geordi, and I liked the episodes with Data's evil twin. I had a conversation about sour candy and my favorite sour candies. I had a conversation about my dogs. So my dog Maisie is a Great Dane, Clyde's a Great Dane Mastiff mix. And then I had a conversation where I talked about playing StarCraft. And you can see that from those conversations, the AI has produced the following facts about me. So the user enjoys playing video games, particularly StarCraft. It enjoys playing against the AI. They're skilled enough to play at the elite level. They prefer playing Protoss faction. They have 2 dogs. They like sours. They have a fondness for sour taste. They like Star Trek. And so you can see that the AI now has a bunch of facts over these 4 conversations, and it can use those to have future conversations with me, which will have actually some contextual data. And then down here I have this configuration block just in case you wanted to see what your configuration is really at. I don't know why I put this in, just so that you can kind of look at it easily. And so this is basically how the memory conversation works. And so you can see it's persisting data. It's using that data in future prompts. And so that's a good example of the persistent memory part. Some of the other parts I worked on, so we have this, I think I mentioned the time feature before. But so we have a simple global response for the time command, and you can see that it just has a regular expression that's one of these moxies, followed by, you can say moxie time, or moxie what time is it, or what is the time. And this response text isn't really used because we use the method, but instead we use this get response code, and we get the time and we format it. And I had to specifically format AM and PM because if I say AM, Moxie says AM, so I had to say AY space M so that Moxie says it is AM. And P space M already made Moxie say it is PM, so I used that. So this is really simple global command that just uses a little code block to produce a response. If you look at a more complicated one, it's going to be, I'll do the chicken one too. Okay, so the chicken example I had before, but I converted it to using the volley method. And so I mentioned before that you can use the global response method has just when you return a string, but in this one you can actually use the whole volley method, and that allows you to have access to persistent data. And so this is the same thing I did before, where you'll say moxie what, why, or how, and it's supposed to reply chicken butt, chicken thigh, or chicken how, or whatever. Chicken butt, chicken thigh, chicken cow. And so like last time, we figure out, but here, look, I use local data, not persistent data. So here I use local data so that every time within a conversation, it'll remember what you did. So I remember the last thing that I said in terms of chicken. Then I figure out the entities because I wanted to extract the last word. I find the response. And then if I had a message that I said before, I said last time I said this. And then I set the output. So this is important when you use the volley method. You have to specifically set the output. You can't just return something. And so if you want to see this in action, and the big difference here is the local data is saving what I last said so that I can say last time I said this. And so now I can go here. Oh, and I'll mention one more thing while I'm doing this, and that is that, it's a global response. Okay, and the other thing is that persistent memory doesn't work in this chat interaction. So local memory does, but not persistent because there's no robot to attach it to. But I can say chicken butt, and it says, I have to say moxie chicken butt. Oh no, I have to say moxie what. Wow, I wrote this. Moxie what chicken butt. And then I can say moxie y, and it says chicken thigh. Last time I said chicken butt. And I can say moxie how, and it says chicken cow. Last time I said chicken thigh. And so you can see that the local memory is kind of accumulating perfectly in here, which is great. That's what we wanted. And now, for the last kind of complicated example I have is going to be the timer wake-up example. And so I basically created two global commands. So one to start a timer. So Moxie start or set a timer for some number of minutes, hours, or seconds. So that's the command. When that happens, oof. So I go through here and I figure out lots of stuff. So I have to get the count. Oh, and I mentioned entities here. So I need to know whether how long they're starting it for, and I need to know what minutes, seconds, or hours. And so I need to capture entity groups 3 and 4, so that this is 1, this is 2, this is 3, and this is 4. So I need to capture 3 and 4. And so when I capture groups 3 and 4, they become entity 0 and entity 1. So entity 0 here is the count, and the expiration is going to be the count times the millisecond per. So I have this millisecond per, which is basically figures out if you're seconds, it's 1,000 milliseconds. If it's minutes, it's 1,000 milliseconds times 60. If it's hours, it's 1,000 milliseconds times 60 times 60. So this figures out how many milliseconds it's going to be for the timer, because all of our timers are in milliseconds because we're programmers. And then look here, we add this. So this basically executes the timer request on the robot, and we're going to request the robot start timer 1, and we're going to set the expiration date as the milliseconds for when it's going to expire in real time in the future. And then I'm going to basically add this to our persistent data so that we remember we started a timer. And I'm going to say starting a timer for this long. And then I'm going to save the expiration. And so that's super nice, because then you can then ask it like when a timer is going to expire. And sorry, I'm going to do something hacky. So I have this simulator, and we can start a chat, OpenMoxie chat default. And so I can say, Moxie set a timer for 5 minutes. And it says starting timer for 5 minutes, execute EV timer request for this time. And while the timer's running, because I put it in my persistent data, I'm going to actually go real quick over here. I'm going to show you while I'm running, because I'm running now. I'm connected with this fake Moxie. And so, oh, but we haven't saved anything, so that's a problem. Okay, so so anyway, that's running. Let me go back to what I was showing you. And so now I can say Moxie timer status, and it says, oh, your timer will expire in 4 minutes and 23 seconds. And you can see that the real time is accumulating, because I just did this and now 37 seconds have happened. I can say, and now I can exit. So let's just exit, because when I exit is when actually the persistent data record gets saved. And so I can show you that now the fake Moxie now has timers. And it has a timer 1 that expires at this time. So cool, that's fun. And so now I'm going to go back, and now I'm going to do that same thing, and I'm going to say Moxie cancel timer. And boom, it canceled my timer, right? And so the timer's canceled. Now I close, so it saves my persistent record out again. And I come back to my fake Moxie, and I look at the data. And now you can see I don't have any timers anymore. My timer record's gone because I canceled the timer. And I clearly still left this here for some reason. I don't know why. Probably carelessness when I coded this app. But anyway, so yeah. So that's how you can set the timer. And then the interesting thing kind of happens when the timer expires. And so this is a very kind of complicated part. But these timers that you set on the robot, they expire, and then when they do that, they launch a module that is defined in your schedule. And so I have a schedule that has this, Moxie schedules. So I have one called that's with the timers. And so here you can see I have this alarm module. And this is the important part. If you don't have this alarm module in your configuration, the alarm thing won't work. So you need to give it a module. So I had to create a module called alarm with a content ID fire, and I need to put it in my schedule. And once I've done that, now I can set timers. And when the timers expire, it's automatically going to call the alarm module. And so I had to create that. And so the alarm module is here. And it basically, I actually changed a lot of this around because I had a lot of problems with the timer. But so I'm going to pre-process, and I have a method called ingest variables where I look what the timer expired was, whether it woke up the robot or not, and when we set whether or not we woke up. And then I basically send, this is my output from the alarm, which plays an audio sound 3 times in a row, I think 2 times in a row, and then it says your timer has expired, and then it exits. And so this is the one that I had to do a custom notify handler for because I found a bug in the robot, and so instead of the robot sending me a prompt for the alarm module, which would have been the first volley, and it would have come in to pre-process, but instead it actually was sending it sometimes in the notify volley. So the notify volley was the first volley. And so in this case, I had to use the notify handler just to grab the timer ID and input variables, because otherwise they would get lost because they're only passed when a timer expires in the very first volley. So it's a little bit of an annoying bug that I had to work around on the robot side. But when you do use this feature, basically when the robot wakes up from a timer, it plays this and then it exits. This can be used to basically set a reminder to that you left something running for 10 minutes while you're playing with Moxie, or something like that. And then the very last thing I want to show you, because I'm realizing this video is getting rather long, is I'm going to show you the Moxie Go launcher. And so the Moxie Go launcher is a module that it basically has a simple launch invocation that's Moxie Go. That's it. If you say it by itself, Moxie Go, you go into the Go launcher. And this is all it does. It's just a launch action to go into the default Moxie Go module. So super simple there. But the module itself is a bit more complicated. So in this case, this is a module that helps the user to launch any other module. And so I explained to the AI what I want. So I'm a robot. I'm trying to help my mentor find something to do. And I support QR code reading in this module to launch activities, but you can also just say what you want and it'll do them. And so in this case, I say you can see below, you can help them select from the list of modules in the module list below. Try to help them find an activity when you're sure you know what they want. Confirm it with them, and then append launch XXX to your response to them where XXX is replaced by the label. For instance, launch AB to launch the animal breathing exercise. So it's good to give the AIs examples. It's very easy for the AI to repeat examples, but if they don't know, sometimes it's hard. So, and I also say keep your responses short, limited to a couple sentences, but give choices when they make sense. And then I just listed all of the modules that you can launch. So, and what they are: affirm, animal breaths, animal exercise. So these are all the requestable modules. I actually pasted the JSON from the code with all of these, and I just asked the AI to produce this list for me and to make up descriptions for them based on their names, and then I fixed 3 of them. So the AI did a really good job helping me out make this module. And so then here, this AI part is fine just by itself. It just lets you talk about what you want, and if you say you want something, it'll launch it. And this one we can try out because this has no persistent memory, so I'll show how it runs in a minute. But it does also support QR code reading. And so how that works is when the volley starts, anytime there's not speech in the volley, which means it's a prompt or a reprompt, we're going to add this function called EB enable QR, which basically says with true. And that tells the robot to turn on the QR code reader to read at least one QR code. And I subscribe to the EBQR event, which is required because that's how the robot's going to tell me what it found. And then if I actually have speech and it's the QR code event, so this is what happens when I get the QR read from the robot, It just passes me the event name in the speech field. So I look, okay, if I have the speech field and it's EVQR event, that means I read a QR code. And so now I get the value of the QR code from the input variables. And if they don't exist, it's an error. And then I look for QR codes that start with the word go, because my custom QR code is go and then tag. So it's a go launch AB or go launch composing. And so then if I have one that starts with go, that's one of my tags. I made that. So I go ahead and I say the output, you got it, and then I append the code. So basically I just strip off the go and I just give it that things in brackets that's in the QR code. And then if I got a QR code that doesn't have go, then I just say I saw a code I don't know, let's try again. And I have to reactivate the QR code reader because every time it reads a code, it turns it off. And so in this way, Moxie is sitting there and you can talk to it, you can ask it what you want to do, but also I made a bunch of these QR codes for every module and you can show it a QR code. And I did this because maybe there's kids who have problems with speech and they just want to get Moxie to dance for them. And so giving them the ability to kind of show a card to get into these activities, I thought would be a nice feature for them. And so that's why I created that. And then, oh yeah, this is actually sloppy. Yeah, I just did this to try to test out the complete handler. And so when you are playing with Moxie Go, the last summary of your conversation with Moxie Go gets logged and added to your last summary of your persistent data. So that's basically how the Moxie Go launcher works. And I, in addition to basically setting that up, I also tried to add all these QR codes, and so I have them in this data block, and so here I have QR codes for launching everything. So if you want to print any of these out or show them to the robot, this Mentor Says. This is the launch QR code for Mentor Says. So these are all here in here. If I wanted to actually do playing cards or something, but I just kind of get away from me. So that's basically the content and everything that I've kind of done for Moxie 0.8. I can't really think of anything else that I wanted to show you that I didn't. So that basically gives you a chance to basically import content from other people. Oh, I guess I'll mention that. All of these modules that I did for exporting, they are also in this content modules block. So you can see I have the memory chat, Moxie Go, Moxie Time, and the Moxie Timers feature. And so all of this content is available, and you can just download these JSON files, and then you can go into the Moxie and you can import the content yourself if you wanted to try any of them. I think that's pretty much everything I wanted to show you. Thanks for listening. I don't think I like my voice any more this time than I did the last time, but I hope you learned something. And good luck with OpenMoxie, and I hope to see a lot of people sharing content coming out in the future.